Hello, my name is Sarmad Ibrahim, and today the topic of my presentation will be the first three stanza of the poem "The Lotos-eaters" by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Now, before jumping into the poem, first have a slight discussion over the poem author. Which era did he belong to? He, of course, belonged to the Victorian era. What was close to him? This poem, "The Lotos-eater," is by Alfred Tennyson, published in Tennyson's 1832 poetry collection. It was inspired by his trip to Spain with his friends Arthur Hallam, where they visited the Pyrenees mountains. Now, the first three stanza is all about scenic description. Let's jump into the paraphrasing of these stanza. It was in these stanza it was a land where it was always afternoon. A dull air surrounded the entire sea belt and moved like the breath of above. A dale, a shallow stream ran down the steep rock, crazy having atmosphere like the smoke spreading on an earth. It stopped for a while, according to the author, and began to flow again in a visible way. In the second stanza, the poet says that it was a land of streams, some of which flowed down the steep rocks like smoke, and some danced upon the land like a thin cover of green grass, and some other brooks ran through the flickering, faint light and shadowing, producing beneath them a slow moving wrap of froth. Now, here we can see that he is creating a mental image in the minds of his reader. He further adds that Ulysses and his companions saw the shining river flowing toward the sea from the interior land. Far away, three mountains, top covered with the snow of long duration, were visible in the light of the setting sun. The dark pine trees wet with the raindrops shot above the matted bushes. Now, in the coming stanza of his poem, he says, "The beauteous sunset teared down on earth in the glowing west. The valley inside the country was clearly visible through the fissure of cracks of the mountains. The yellow colored open highlands was enriched by palm trees and several, mandrake smelling thin plants called galingals. The land of the lotus eaters was such as remained unchanged through all the season, and according to author, the sad looking and dark skinned lotus eaters who appeared pale in the rosy red light of the setting sun came near the ship of the manners. Now, if we could notice that all these scenes are like scenic and a detailed description of his visit to such magical place. Now, the literary devices. Now, in line 5 and 6 we can see that as assonance all around the coast the languid air did swoon, breathing like one that hath a very dream. That's assonance. Now, the simile is from line 6 to 8, breathing like one that hath a very dream, and like a downward smoke the slender stream. That's all from me, and have a nice day.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Anis Safeen. I hope everyone is doing well. Sarmad has left at stanza 3 and I'm going to start from stanza 4. The summary of the stanza 4 is the speaker describing the lotus fruit which the lotus eaters brought to the sellers. The branches were filled with the fruit and flowers of the lotus plant, which the lotus eaters shared with each man from the ship. After eating from the plant, the men were overcome. Each man became extraordinarily tired, and their voices sounded like dead men. Uh, it was if they were both asleep and awake at the same time. The fruit had some kind of magical effect on them, and they all lost their intentions, and the only thing they could hear was the beating of their own hearts. In this stanza, if I talk about the literary device that is simile, that you will find, and you will find that in line number 34, that is, his voice was thin, his voice is from the grave. Coming toward the stanza 5, so this is the last stanza of that 9 stanzas. So in this last stanza, the men confess to a new desire. They set themselves down upon the yellow sand at the shore of the land. They are doing some kind of confession. Their thoughts were, they were missing their homes and they wanted to go to their homes. They all were, they dream of their child and wives and etc. Whatever they left behind, they desired for their home to go back. But they no longer felt that they had the energy to to return to their home, and the men were more than content to remain with the Lotos-eaters for the rest of their lives. Uh, the sight which once gave them all pleasure and excited their inner adventurer now means nothing. If I talk about the literary devices here in this fifth stanza, so that is you can find hyperbole in line 37 and 38. That is, and they set them down upon the yellow sand between the sun and moon upon the shore. And you can also find a personification in line 41. Yes, you can find that in line 41. These were the first nine stanzas. Now moving towards the sixth stanzas, which is a song, choric song, and it is consists of eight stanzas, and this is the second half of the poem. In this line, Odysseus' grief describes the safety and comfort of the land of the Lotos-eaters, and the lack of desire they feel to return home. In the first of these stanzas, the men begin by stating that this land is full of music that falls softly. Its sound resembles the petal of roses blowing onto the grass, or perhaps it resembles the night dews and softly collect on still waters. Uh, if I talk about literary device, that is metaphor here. Um, they continue peeling up metaphors and state that it is gentler than in the feeling of closing one's eyes when one is tired. It brings joy to them that is like sweet sleep falling down from the blissful skies. Before winding it up, I want to add one thing here. By comparing two states of the salads before the consumption of the lotus flower and after, Tennyson alludes to the idea of flexible reality. Reality is not a fixed state. It is all depend on one's state of mind. When one's mind is changed in any way, the perception of an idea, landscape, environment, all these change. So there is no fact on no possible way to compare one's own reality to another, or any reality at one moment to another, to a different moment, right? So for reality is influenced by the person experiencing and his or her state of mind at a time. Reality is like reality is not fixed or reliable, and the ingestion of mind altering substances alter one's perception even more. So the proof in the sellers that men who should desire to return home more than anything only desire rest and the consumption of the mind altering lotus. So Tennyson's idea that reality is always fluctuating impacts the way one views the world. Thank you so much for listening. Over to Fasi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Fasi Ahmed and I am going to present 7th, 8th, and 9th stanzas of this poem. In this poem, there are two halves of the poem. The second half of the poem is made up of a choric song in which the men describe all the reasons that they want to remain on the island. In seventh stanza of this poem, which is the second part of the choral song, follows a particular theme of discontent. The narrator speaking for the man asks the universe that why men have no rest while all others do. They state that they are waved upon with heaviness while also being consumed by sharp distress. These are the words used by the narrator for the difficulties and stress of the men who are which they are living with. He states that life is not fair for men as everything has rest, then only they should be the that why should only they be the creatures to consistently toil alone. As in the first part of the poem, a man after eating the lotus-eater fruits are only concerned for their own well-being. So here the men are rejecting their previous lives of hard work and struggle in favor of one in which they will only rest. So they no longer want to be thrown from sorrow to sorrow. In the next stanza, that is stanza 8, which is the third part of the choral song, the speaker state that how the men feel that unlike the rest of the creation, that they are unable to have a peaceful life that consists of living and then dying. They want to be live as a leaf. So here the poet has used the description of leaf, that leaf started to bud, then being blown on its branch, then growing green and broad, and do not have anything to take care of, and then finally after being dew fed under the moon, it turns yellow and float to the ground. So the speakers, they are seeing the life cycle of the simplest part of the creation as the most appealing to them. The speaker said that flowers and leaves do not have to toil around just like them. They just have to bud and then to live a short span of life, which is decided for them, and then they float around. In this fourth stanza of this choric sound, which is stanza 9th of this whole poem, in this stanza the speakers are bemoaning the fact that we are all are heading towards death and must labor on the way there. So they do not believe that life should not be completely made up of labor. They want to be left totally alone, unbothered by the real world. They said that their lives are moving quickly and death will soon approach. So while they are still alive, they want to be left alone and having nothing else than taken from them. There is no point that they can see fighting wars against evil, as there is no pleasure in it. So nothing in this world is going to last. So the speaker said that why waste their time making dreadful memories. At the end of this stanza, they come to the conclusion that it is better to just die now rather than live a life of labor. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, all of you. I hope everyone is good, healthy, safe, and sound. Everyone is staying at home. This is Azazul Shams from section 4th B, and we are presenting the Lotos-eaters, written by Alfred, Lord Tennyson. And my part would be the 10th and 11th stanza of the very poem. This is get into the paraphrasing. Look at these lines, how sweet it were hearing the downward stream with half shut eyes, over to seem falling asleep in a half dream, to dream and dream like yonder ember light, which will not leave the mere bush on the height. So you know what the poet is doing here is he's describing some images. Of course, it looks, even if it looks simple, even if it looks common to you, I'm sure if someone is high on opium or something, they would be feeling some other thing. The sound of the streams, they would be feeling it like a symphony, like a musical lyric or something maybe. So they are feeling all these things with half shut eyes, and they're falling asleep in half a dream, to dream and dream, like yonder, like it's a key word here. This word written here, falling asleep in half dream, half dream, I mean dreaming, or just sleeping, it doesn't look that attractive. The feeling of sleeping, it doesn't look that attractive, I guess. But you know, the best part is when you are drifting off when you are awake and you are drifting off into your sleep, that very moment, that is the best moment. That is when you feel calm, that is when you feel peaceful, and that is what you enjoy. I mean, going into the sleep, you don't know about yourself, you're unconscious, but that very feeling when you are half awake and half asleep, that is the best moment you could enjoy. So for them, it looks like that moment have just delayed, that moment have just frozen for them. And not only that moment, it looks like the time has also frozen for them. They have been talking about endless afternoons, and now they are talking about these frozen sunsets as well. In these lines, like yonder amber light which will not leave the mere bush on the height, the sunset seems to be frozen, seems to have been frozen. And what they're doing is to hear each other's whispered speech, eating the lotus day by day. They don't want to do anything but to just whisper with each other and to just eat lotuses, to watch the crisping ripples on the beach and tender curving lines of creamy spray, to lend their hearts and spirits wholly to the influence of mild-minded melancholy. Of course, they are high on something. They are high on lotus. If someone, I'm sure, if someone is high on opium, if someone is high on weed or something like that, they would be feeling out of this world. They would be feeling melancholies, and they would be feeling symphonies, as I said. Uh, and they are also high on lotuses. So they just want to listen to their hearts, and they just want to listen to the symphonies, the melancholies of their minds, and they don't want to move from there. To influence, okay, to muse and brood and live again in memory with those old faces of her infancy. So what he's trying to say here is, I'm okay. So what he's trying, what the writer is doing here is he's again shifting the mood from one stanza to another stanza, and now he is going to move to another stanza. For that he needs a topic, and he's choosing that very topic. It's the memories. They are now talking about the memories. They remember something. They remember the memories of their childhood, maybe. So when you look at these lines, with those old faces of our infancy, now what it can mean two things here. It can be an oxymoron, in a sense that with those old faces of our infancy, it's a mixture of somehow young and old. He's describing their childhood, but that is long gone now. It means it's been a lot of time, since they were young. Or also, what they are trying to say is that they remember the old faces when they were young, the old faces in their village when they were young. They remember them. So they might have been dead now, and they might have been underground now. So they are talking about memories now. Let's just get into another stanza. There is the memory of our wedded lives, and there the last embraces of our wives, and their warm tears, but all had suffered change. For surely now our household hearts are cold. Our sons inherit us. Our looks are strange. So they remember something. They definitely need to have something to think of. A human mind. Okay, so the stanza 11th. They are talking about the memories now. A human mind, it always think about something, and they are thinking about their old lives, and they're thinking about their wives. They're thinking about their wives. They're thinking about the tears when they were crying, when they were leaving. Their wives were crying, of course, for them, and their children, of course, and their sons. And now what they say is, our sons inherit us. Our looks are strange, and we should come like ghosts to trouble Jai. The thing is, every soldier, he's afraid of this very thing, that he is going to be forgotten by the people he loves, by the people he admire, by his villagers or by his companions. And that is what they are, of course, scared of as well. But there's also another point. They are looking for excuses not to move. They are looking for excuses not to go back to their villages. So that is one excuse, of course. Uh, or else the island princes overbold have eat our substance, and the minstrel sings. He's also afraid that the state might have just locked down their all their land or all their wealth as well. Now here they are also afraid that the rich people or the state, they have captured their lands and their wealth. And the minstrel who sings at the court as well, he would have been singing of their great deeds, which are probably forgotten as well now, the 10 years of war which they have fought, of course. uh, and just as I said, they are looking for excuses. They are looking for excuses not to go back. So this one excuse as well, that they are afraid that there would be confusion now in their land or in their village. Uh, they believe that when the gods fight between each other, it starts creating disturbance in the land as well, in the people, among the people as well, which could not be sorted out by the people themselves. So they think that there would have been trouble now in the village, so there's no need to go back to the village. They can just live this life and enjoy it to the most. And what they're worried about is confusion. It's They say that there is confusion worse than death, trouble on trouble, pain on pain. The confusion, the depression, the distress, which is more than death, which is more painful than death itself. uh, they're actually not afraid of dying, but they're actually afraid of living with pain. They're actually afraid of living in confusion and chaos, of course. So the last line is sore tasks to hearts worn out by many wars. No, it's not the last line, my bad, sorry. uh, sore tasks sore task to hearts worn out by many wars. They have, of course, been now, they are very tired of the wars. They are very tired of moving. They're very tired of just finding new places and going to wars. And they are tired of gazing onto the pilot stars, of course, the stars, the North Star, which is known to give you directions. In the previous times, they definitely didn't have that much of advanced technology, so they used that star for the directions. And that is what they are talking about. And eyes grown dim with gazing on the pilot stars. They have been traveling for so much now that their eyes are now dim, and they could not probably locate the North Stars as well for their location. Uh, the poetic devices have been used. There have been a lot of images which have been portrayed in these lines. There is an alliteration in line number 109 of the poem, which is this line: to influence to the influence of mild-minded melancholy, to lend our hearts and spirits wholly to the influence of mild-minded melancholy. And there is an oxymoron as well, which I probably discussed as well, with those old faces of our infancy. So that would be all from my side. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, stay at home, take care. Khuda Hafiz.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Walid Khan, and I'm going to talk about the last part of the Lotos-eaters by Lord Tennyson. The last part contains the 7th, 8th, and 9th stanzas of the choric song. So, coming to the 7th stanza, the men that have come with Odysseus to the island, talk about staying on the island instead of returning home, because they're just tired of sailing in the sea and fighting wars and facing different kinds of dangers. So they say that they just want to rest on the island. They just want to rest on the bed of the amaranth and molly plants. These are two different kinds of European plants. And molly is also said to have magic properties. So, therefore, they want to relax with half dropped eyelids and spend their days watching the river and its water flowing from the purple hill. So, the sea, which in the past was their pathway which in the sea they would always sail and face dangers, so that same sea will just be a sight from a distance to them. So therefore there will be no more sailing or dangers that they have to face in the and they had to face in the past, and their safety will be guaranteed, and they will spend endless days of watching water flowing to the sea and the beautiful scenery of the island. Coming to the eighth stanza, the men talk about the lotus flowers spread all over the island. They say that the lotuses are found everywhere on the island, like on the barren peak and the winding creek, and the air flows gently with a mellower tone through every part of the island, and it also spreads the yellow lotus dust, which is the thing that attracts, which is called pollen as well. So they also say that we have had enough of action and they just want to relax now. They don't want to go again in ships and sailing to the sea. They just want to rest in the island. They no longer want to face the monsters of the deep. And they also swear an oath that they will ignore the rest of the mankind and only enjoy the beautiful scenery and environment of the island and eat a lot of lotuses. So coming to the ninth stanza, they talk about how the gods are careless and they don't care about human. So they talk about the gods. They say that the gods are just so careless. They don't heed the miserable conditions of humankind. They just watch the humans from above, from the sky, and play music and enjoy and smile at them. While on the other hand, humans face plagues, famines, earthquakes, and other types of natural disasters. While the gods they just rest in the Greek gods, they just rest in the skies and don't care in the human affairs. When I read an analysis, it was written there that this was just a misrepresentation of the gods. The Greek gods are famous for interfering in human affairs and making the humans fight with each other. But the poet has just presented an opposite or another image of the gods in this um, poem. He says that the gods just rest in the skies and they just watch humans suffering and facing dangers and living miserable lives. So he basically says that the humans have come into the world just for working hard and suffering, and then they die. There's no other purpose of humans. And at the end of the poem, the poet says that, "Oh, rest ye, brother mariners, we will not wander more," which ultimately implies that slumber or a rest is more sweet than toil or suffering or hard work. Thank you very much.